We are Makilala TV, the first Filipino-American TV talk show in the New York metro area. Get to know us as we talk to the community leaders, innovators, advocates, and emerging artists who affect Filipino-American life.
Hello, my name is Cristina Pastor. Welcome to Makilala. Being a nurse is no longer just a woman's job. Men entered the nursing workforce in the 1950s to 60s while looking for employment at the end of the war. Today, men comprise about 10 to 12% of all American nurses, creating a diverse nursing population. How many of them are male nurses of color? It's hard to say. How many of them are Filipinos? Even harder. What we know is that Filipino male nurses are taking on greater responsibilities, holding important executive positions, and making a difference in American hospitals. We are proud that two of them are with us today. Agustin Guido III, Director of Nursing at New Jersey Eastern Star Home, and Mark Jordan Polon, Assistant Director of Nursing, Medical Surgical Services, Dialysis University Hospital in Newark. On behalf of my co-hosts, Rachelle Ocampo and Jen Fuhrer, who couldn't join us today, and our guest co-host, Elizabeth Cueva, welcome to Makilala, gentlemen. Let's start with Gus.
Hi.
Gus and then Mark. Have you always wanted to be a nurse, or is that decision influenced by family?
It's mostly influenced by my family. But of course, the final decision is mine.
I'm sure it is.
You mean there are nurses in your family?
Yes,
Okay.
I have six nurses in the family.
6 nurses? Does that include your
Immediate.
mom and your sisters?
My sisters
Oh.
and my nieces and nephews.
Oh, okay. All right. And Mark, same question?
So yes, my family had a big influence in my nursing career. They either want to become a doctor, a lawyer, but originally want to become a priest, not a nurse.
I know.
So, but then I thought to myself, well, I'm the only child. Let me think about it first and explore
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
But majority of my cousins are actually nurses.
Nurses, yeah.
And they're nursing in other countries and other states.
So, a quick follow-up. If you have this network of nurses around you, is it easy to find a job? Mark?
It is.
It is, yeah.
'Cause
Because they can just make referrals to
correct,
you, right?
yeah. It's all about who you know.
Rochelle?
No, I actually don't have any nurses in my family. I am a strange
too.
family. I don't have any nurses. I mean, medical healthcare field, including myself, yes. But one question I had is, if you didn't become a nurse and you didn't have that family influence, what would you have become?
I would go for teaching.
Teaching.
Yeah, teaching holds a very special place in my heart because we are a family of teachers.
Also,
From
yeah.
my parents and my sisters. And a lot of relatives are on the teaching profession.
Teaching high school, college? people?
Both.
Okay, right, yeah. Lily?
Well, first I'd like to, I do have family members who are nurses, and most of them, they took up nursing because they wanted to work here in the USA.
Yes, yeah.
So I want to ask you about your career trajectory. I think there's a different pathways between the two of you. You studied in the Philippines, and Mark studied here.
Studied here,
So
yeah.
tell us about, your experience, like what made you decide to come over here in the USA, and also Mark after.
Yeah.
Gus.
It's a threefold reason for me why I ended up going into nursing. So the biggest one is family influence and the opportunity and a challenge. Especially when I was in my senior year of high school, I got the opportunity to apply to a university. They were looking for the top 2% graduates to apply for a class of 50. So I consider this one as a challenge.
Wow.
And after graduation, I landed my first job as a school nurse in the Philippines. And I love what I do. Like I said, education is really part of who I am. And it just happened that there was an opportunity for me to come here in the US. At the time, my father was under treatment for cancer in the bigger hospital in the Philippines. And I spoke to one of the doctors, and she told me, like, with your qualification, why you didn't apply in the US?
Yeah.
So she asked me to give her my papers, and she gave it to her sister, who happens to be working here in the US.
Wow.
And that was the start. And
Yeah.
then I just got a call from the human resource from here in the
Oh, wow.
US that they are coming to the Philippines to interview me.
Just you?
Yeah, so that started the whole process,
Oh, wow.
really, and that's where they offered me the green card to come
Yeah.
here in the US. So it was a very, very quick decision.
Yeah.
This was definitely before Zoom. or
Yeah,
else they
that
would have
was way
probably
back
done
in
it before.
2002. So it
How
was a long
long were
time
you a
ago.
nurse in the Philippines before you decided to come
I
over
was
here?
already in the field for 6 years.
6 years.
Okay.
Yes. So it was, it was a
It was so
very good
effortless,
experience.
right?
Yeah.
It seems so effortless, Mark.
Yeah. Well, when I was 14 years old in the Philippines, and my mom was already working in New Jersey
As a nurse.
as a nurse.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And since I'm the only child, my mom misses me. She told my dad to just bring me here to the States, to which I did, and I thought about it as a great opportunity as well. Then, of course, I was thinking about, I like helping people, but then I'm the only child.
Yeah.
Then I was thinking about the priesthood, but then I thought about nursing. So I just went into nursing instead.
You had no second thoughts about it.
No second thoughts. I mean, I had second thoughts, but then I decided, oh, you know what? Let's just go into nursing.
Yeah.
Because,
Maybe mommy knows best or something like
yeah, I know. Mommy always says, well, I'm not going to stop you from what you're doing.
Oh, of
But of course, you keep pushing that
Yeah,
nursing idea. And I like to help people directly that can get immediate response from the help you've given them. So I thought to myself, well, nursing is close to that, what I'm looking for.
I heard it's probably one of those urban legend about male nurses, that people get male nurses to do heavy lifting of patients. Is that true? That's not the only value that you provide, right? I'm sure there's more. But usually people hire male nurses so they will lift patients. Did you do a lot of lifting when you were starting out?
Not really. So I believe that is a misconception.
It's probably.
When they are talking about male nurses, of course, they are thinking about the muscles.
Yeah.
But with the modern technology right now,
You don't
we have
need
a
it.
lot of machineries that we use to
lift
lift
people.
patients. Yeah.
What about you, Mark? Did you do a lot of lifting when you were starting out?
When I was a bedside nurse,
Yeah,
I
bedside
started out in
nurse.
the trauma unit. So a lot of gunshots, broken
Oh my God,
bones,
yeah.
and sometimes we've had very obese patients. And we did have technology, but they were time consuming. So they would call all the male technicians, male nurses, male doctors to come help pull the patient up.
Okay.
So
So it's
from my experience,
You did
You
some
are
heavy
in the
lifting.
There's
trauma
some heavy-
unit. Yes.
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
That's right.
So you said you traveled from the Philippines to work here for the opportunity.
Yes.
Now this, I feel like, contributes to this term called brain drain in the Philippines. Do you feel bad that you left because you're contributing to that term?
Or guilt.
Or guilt?
Not really in the sense that I believe we have wonderful talents, a lot of talented people, nurses in the Philippines who are ready to fill the gap, I would say. With today's situation, with the pandemic, it's a
Yeah.
little bit alarming, really, because not only here in the US, but other countries are in need of nurses, and that contributes a lot of the brain drain situation in the Philippines too. So we'll see how this will unfold.
Yeah. Lily?
Well, being that you are there are right now few male nurses, Filipino male nurses. Have you experienced any discrimination in your
Yeah.
particular field? Or on the flip side, did you feel like, there's more like a preference
For
to
Filipinos,
Filipino
for Filipinos,
male nurses?
Maybe Mark can start.
Well, personally, I don't think I've experienced any sort of bullying or negative
Oh, really?
treatment.
You're so lucky. Yeah.
But I know, but I've seen how it played out to some other male nurses. For example, I had a colleague that I worked with, and of course, there's some. He was working closely with another girl, a female nurse, and they would always go to the med room and would help each other with medications, weights medications, or find certain items for the patient. But I have these other employees who would just eavesdrop and say that, oh my gosh, let's say Cristina and Gus are in the med room, they're giggling, they're so close to each other, and then they start to speculate things like,
rumors.
oh, they're probably like
Yeah.
kissing in there.
Oh,
And
really? So there's a lot of gossip in the hospital.
They do. Oh yeah, there's a lot.
The drama.
Yeah.
Oh, nursing drama. Okay.
Nursing
That's
drama.
also, that can be considered like sexual harassment, right? If someone is coming up with all these like rumors and
Oh, absolutely.
so that,
And-
okay.
And sometimes they make it twisted and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
spicy that even went to the point that they're messing around in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
utility rooms which is all false.
Yeah.
So, do female patients look for female nurses and male patients look for male nurses? Because I've never been attended to by a male nurse and I would not request one. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, Cristina.
Well, in my experience, women, yes,
They-
mostly. Men, not so much.
Not so much. Okay.
Yes, and it also more prevalent to the older generation rather than the younger ones. And this usually apply to direct caregivers, not much for nurses.
Ah, okay.
So direct caregivers that somebody involved with,
with body,
yes.
private, attention. Mark, would you like to add to that?
So from my experience, occasionally I've experienced that due to religious reasons and privacy reasons. Sometimes we've had Muslim women who really
would ask for-
traditional, correct, would ask for just women.
Women nurses.
We've even women techs, so no
Yes.
males, period.
Oh, no males entering the room,
Yeah.
something like that.
Right, which is with the exception of the physician.
Oh, okay, yeah,
They can't.
yeah.
They get a free pass.
yeah, because the physician does not really. I mean, the nurse is touches you and touches the whole body, right? And then,
It can be. I mean, I would, if I don't feel comfortable with a person, whether they're
That's
male,
right,
female,
yeah.
I would ask for somebody
Yeah, yeah,
else.
that's
But
true.
that's only because that's my personality. I would say something.
Yeah.
Some people would be just cringe every single, and not say something.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in your agencies, in your hospitals, you do have policies in place, right, to address those particular issues.
We do.
You do, and
We
of
do,
course,
we do.
definitely.
You know,
Good to
I remember a time when there was this sexual harassment issues, sexual molestation issues was in the news. So I went to a hospital. Usually I would just go to a hospital with a doctor, just the two of us. But when that issue came up, there would always be a nurse. So there would always be three people. You know, I don't know if that period in time was still fresh in your memory, but it happened a couple of years back, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just good practice too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just good
Now it
practice.
is good practice,
Yes,
yeah.
it should be standard,
Yeah.
especially if like a OB or GYN
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of
that's right. Yeah.
thing. But for you as individuals, what do you do for fun outside of being a male nurse?
Mark, go ahead.
Well, I like to travel. So last year I went to Florida twice, one in Disney World for a friend's wedding, and then another in Miami for another friend's wedding. So we partied in Disneyland, in Disney World. We partied in a boat in Miami, which was very fun. And then I traveled to Iceland.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
Would love
to
to
explore, I know, you
Yeah.
see the Northern Lights.
Oh, you
Yeah,
were able
yeah,
to
that's
catch
right.
them.
So how often do you travel in a year?
In a year?
Yeah.
Twice a year.
Oh, twice a year, okay. So Gus, what's your
Travel, of course.
Travel too.
And shopping and movies.
shopping has to be there because I
Yeah.
know a lot of female nurses who really enjoy shopping.
It's a stress reliever.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
That's right. Lily?
So the past years, like during the pandemic, those were really very challenging years. So can you tell us, how it affected you psychologically in terms of your work or even your personal lives?
Well, I thought when I worked directly with these patients who are COVID, the first wave, I was shocked at how short life is.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had patients where I would be talking to them like this normally, and then 5 minutes later I would come back to the room and they passed away.
Oh,
No.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You probably
So-
lost a lot of colleagues too, right?
For some reason, in my unit that I worked at, they got infected, but they never.
Ah, okay.
That's good.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What
Stuff.
about you, Gus? How was it?
Was very, very tough, especially during the first wave of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and everybody was
The early year.
grasping what to do because that is really something new. I work in a facility. It's considered long-term care facility. Having said that, that's a long-term facility with a lot of specialized units. So my facility handled brain trauma. I have ventilators patients, so they are very, very vulnerable. So when the COVID hits, it's very, very alarming. So everybody was on their guard. And I was very happy that during the first and the second wave of the pandemic, we don't have anybody who expired. Everybody recovered. So everybody was vigilant. A lot of people thanked the management, but I was thanking my team also for their efforts and everything they did to keep our patients safe. And even now that I transferred to a different network, so we got commendation also from the community for having zero COVID death in the
Great
facility.
for the both of
Yes.
you.
In your
No
facility.
casualties.
Yeah, I'm
That's
very,
a,
very
that's a
happy.
huge deal, especially
Right.
for long-term.
How do you explain that? That's really impressive.
It's more, you have to be on top of your game, I would say. Even before the pandemic hits in the United States, so we did a lot of literature review, what kind of the expectations are, especially that this is a viral infection. So the tried and tested true clinical approaches for viral infections, we have to be on top of our game and apply
That's
it
right,
to the
yeah.
patients. And I'm very, very happy that we have a good outcome. But I just feel bad that
the others
other
were not as
facilities.
lucky. Yeah. So, Mark, when during the height of the pandemic, and in the initial part, the government was not up to date with PPE and supplying all the necessary equipment that they need. Were you worried that you might get infected? You might test positive?
Oh yeah, I was very worried because we don't really know this virus completely. We
That's
were
right.
taking orders from the CDC
Yeah.
and following whatever information they were giving us down the line. So I know it kept changing, but also with the resources, we were losing a lot of masks, like N95 masks,
Yeah.
and we had to sometimes recycle them.
Yes.
We would put them in a paper
Brown
bag.
paper bag.
You mean
correct. And then
losing people were stealing the masks?
no.
Oh,
we
they
would
were not
just-
supplying
Not
enough.
enough.
They were
Not
not
enough.
supplying enough. Okay.
Correct,
Right.
yeah. And they would process it to an area where they would clean it. Then the next day you come back, you use
And
it
use the
again.
same now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Rachelle?
No, I really feel for our nurses. Like, really, you are the heroes of the pandemic, all frontline
Oh, yeah,
workers.
yeah.
It's just mind-boggling that there's a shortage now, as if that people have lost either respect or I just lost the reminder of the importance of how nurses played a role in the pandemic. I wanted to ask, really, how has that changed in terms of people's perspective of nurses since the beginning of the pandemic and now? Have you felt that people treat you differently because they know that you're a nurse?
Are you treated now with more respect or something?
Yeah.
From my experience, it felt the same. I mean, I know when I go to certain websites, they would offer discounts for nurses.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of my colleagues would take advantage of that. But sometimes telling my other friends who are not in the same profession, I would tell them, they know that I'm a nurse, and they would tell them, Mark, I have so much respect for you during this pandemic. Thank you for all that you do.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I know that restaurants would give you free coffee and free snacks. That
Yeah,
was
there
that
are.
was very common during that time, right?
Yeah.
So what do people, when you tell people that you're a nurse, what is the most interesting reaction that you got from them? Gus.
It's both the reaction and the response I get
Oh.
from people. I remember way back when I was still in the Philippines and I was into school nursing. When I told the students and the parents that I am a nurse, the reaction was like, "What? So you're a nurse, doc?" So it's more like they're still calling me a doctor, and they are surprised to to find out that I'm a nurse. That's why they say like, oh, nurse, oh, doc, you're
So
a
why,
nurse.
why? Because in the Philippines, male nurses are not so
Yeah,
common.
they look
Not
into
all.
like male,
Oh, that's
you know,
what you mean. Okay.
medical figure as a
Yeah.
doctor.
As a doctor. Oh.
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Well,
Any funny reactions?
to some people that who know me that I'm Filipino, and I said, yeah, I'm a nurse, and they said, of course, Mark.
What else would you be?
What else exactly? Like, of
A
course.
priest? No. Definitely a nurse.
No regrets, right?
No regrets. I told them I did follow the lines.
That's right.
When you find out that, like, if a patient is Filipino, do you have some sort of a connection with that patient? You give, you know, because personally, from my experience, my father was hospitalized during the pandemic. And when there's a male nurse, Filipino, we feel that there's really more compassion.
Yeah.
That there's a connection, they care. So, you know, what's your experience when it comes to that?
Yeah, my main goal for the patient who comes in my facility is for them to be comfortable. That's very, very important. And when I found out that we have Filipino patients coming into our building, I make sure I will greet them in our language
Oh, yes. That's
to make
so
them
really
more
important.
comfortable
Yeah,
right
yeah.
away.
That's right.
And that really helps a lot. It helps with the healing.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark?
I share the same sentiment because when we have patients who are Filipino, I mean, first of all, I treat all my patients fairly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a Filipino,
Filipino,
patient, the cultural attitudes
Yeah.
come up because I'm young, and they said
Yeah.
saying polite words like po, opo,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
being gentle with them, talking to them in our language
That's
to make them
right.
feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I remember a story of my father. He was in a hospital in Newark, and non-Filipino nurse, I don't want to mention any ethnicity, a non-Filipino nurse said, Mr. Del Carmen, remove your shirt and I'll come back here in 15 minutes. And then it was very stern, the tone was very stern. And then a Filipina nurse came in and said, hi Lolo, kumusta po kayo? So tanggalin lang ho natin ang inyong t-shirt, tapos papalitan na. You know that manner
Yeah,
of
the same
speaking.
experience. Yeah.
And it was very
Comforting.
caring,
Caring.
for my father. Tapos my father would have a conversation with them, you know. There's really something special about the Filipino
special.
nurse, right?
Yeah,
About the
definitely.
and they don't do that only to Filipinos, they do that to all kinds,
everyone.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
So there's really something about it. But as a
Bedside
male,
manners.
Yeah.
Superb.
parang it's like nursing was created for us. It's a job created for us. What about male nurses? Do you adopt that kind of tone of speaking also?
For me, I mean, from my observation in general, male nurses are more laid back, and we don't readily complain, or we're not as loud as
Yeah.
other folks when it comes to like our in stressful situations.
Yeah.
I've observed colleagues who just keep to themselves when they're facing a lot of, difficult working conditions.
Yeah.
And we
that's
just follow through it. And,
That's right.
you know.
So
Oh,
Rachelle,
yeah. So in terms of difficult work conditions, right now, I think there's some hospitals in New York City. There's gonna have a strike of
Oh,
nurses
yeah.
happening on Monday
That's right.
if they don't get what their union wants. How do you feel about that? That some of you, Filipino nurses are about to strike and not serve their patients because of the conditions that they've been suffering through.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a sad situation because not only that we can't come into agreement with treating our employees well, but at the same time, who's going to take care of the patients?
Patients.
And
I mean, don't hospitals prepare for that eventuality? Like nurses will walk out, and who will take over?
there's definitely discussions and negotiations with the unions
Yeah.
before it comes to a strike. I know they meet together and discuss what can we agree, what can we not agree on.
That's right. Yeah.
And if there's a prolonged period of time where they cannot agree on, then somehow the union can lean towards pushing for a strike or renegotiate a different contract.
That's right.
And with regard to a strike, a friend of mine was saying from agency, saying that if the nurses will strike,
Yeah.
one of the travel agencies will pay them $200 an hour.
Wow.
That's
Travel
where traveling nurses comes
Traveling
in.
nurses. Oh. I think this is. Oh, go ahead, Lily.
No, go ahead.
I think this is probably the last question. there will always be a shortage of nurses here in the U.S., right? And of course, they get from our country and some other countries. That will never go away, right?
It won't.
It won't, right? It will always, our country will always run short of nurses. Any reaction to that, Gus?
Yes, that's true.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. Yes, it's kind of sad, but I'm very happy because by hiring a lot of Filipino nurses from the Philippines, we can show to the world
Yeah.
the talents that we have, Filipinos, and the good traits that we have also. It's a little bit sad because it's a brain drain, so
Yeah.
we might run out of nurses.
Nurses in the Philippines.
Yes.
Any quick reaction, Mark?
Well, I read in an article that there's always 200,000 openings for nurses every year.
Here in the U.S.?
Here in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
until 2031
Okay.
because of the retirement of baby boomers and
Yes.
lack of, and we actually turned away like 66,000 qualified applicants for entry-level nursing because there's a lack of nurse educators.
Nurse educators. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Gus and Mark,
Thank you.
Thank you.
for enlightening us about what it's like to be a male nurse and to be a male nurse of color, right? Those are two different things now. As Filipino nurses of all genders, I think we are valued in American society because we really work hard and we work with great attitude. And we're friendly, we're gentle, we're caring. I think it's just a matter of time and men will no longer be in the minority and then they will become a formidable presence in the American healthcare system. Thanks, Lily, for joining us again.
Thank you.
And on behalf of everyone else here in Makilala, thanks for watching.